All right, here we go.
Where that agreement is among scholars. And to put it simply, on these issues, it's Paul. So Paul, being a Bedrock eyewitness, that believed he saw the risen Jesus. This has not been denied across the board throughout history. When it comes to his sources, when it comes to Paul's early letters, when it comes to traditions that he is quoting within the letters, Paul, it's agreed upon that he wrote those letters. It's agreed upon that he's getting these traditions from early on, probably when he hung out with Peter for 2 weeks, with James, the Lord's brother. And then we get bedrock facts that I focus on concerning Jesus' death and resurrection that come forth from those bedrock sources. And those are namely these: Jesus' crucifixion. Then we have the claim, the actual just claim of Jesus' resurrection. I think that alone is just an innovative, unparalleled, unique idea that had not been known. Nobody was expecting a resurrected Messiah, let alone a crucified Messiah, in the middle of history. The third is the appearances, which largely are cataloged in 1 Corinthians 15, one of these early traditions. And then the fourth would be, I could use the great title from Bart's book, The Triumph of Christianity. So the fourth is basically how the early Christians, starting in Jerusalem and the very place where Jesus was crucified, launched from there, and went on to transform the Roman Empire, went on to transform many nations, laid the foundations of Western civilization, and ultimately, still today, the largest religion on the planet. And all the Pew Research shows throughout the 21st century is going to continue to be. We have a religious future, a religious landscape of the world in our future. So that's kind of some bare facts and sources to lay out.
It's a helpful one. Now, we're not going to cover in depth all of those facts on this conversation, and I thought we might sort of specifically focus in on maybe the last two that you mentioned, particularly the appearances and the rise of Christianity. But let's just briefly touch at least on those others, the fact that Jesus died and the claim of the resurrection. Now, presumably, you don't contest that both of those things happened, Jesus' death on the cross, and indeed that people claimed that a Messiah had been resurrected in history. Do you want to add any?
Well, not much. I mean, no, it's absolutely. I think, the problem with saying that every historian agrees on something is problematic. You can't really
say virtually all.
Yeah, because of course there are people who deny that Jesus existed, and the weird.
That's true, even though they're absolutely wrong. I know. Okay, thank you so much for coming back to my live. I don't know what's going on. I think it's because it was Joe Rogan's video. I've never really had it get taken off while live streaming. I've had problems in the past where I had to figure out how to get a video unblocked or something when it comes to Joe Rogan. But I don't know. What did you mean by a live chat? Just like you guys asked me questions, or I'm curious, or just do I answer? But let's get back into it.
Is that
and I mock them well in the book, and I quote you.
The strange thing is some of the people who think that Jesus didn't exist do think that he was crucified.
Right. Okay.
That's
in
an
the
oddity.
heavens. In the heavens. Yes, you're right.
Yeah. So,
I know who you're talking about.
I think just about every historian who's really worth their weight would, yes, absolutely. I mean, they'd say more things about Jesus, but they would agree on. But they certainly agree that he was crucified, and they certainly agree that afterward the disciples claimed he was raised from the dead. Absolutely.
Okay, great. Well, we've got a measure of agreement to start with, and
to God be the glory.
I suppose what we want to know is ultimately, how do we put these facts together? And I think that means probably just sketching out a little bit more about, well, why don't we start with the appearances, Justin? So tell us about these appearances. Let's find out where Bart agrees or disagrees with you concerning the nature of them and what was reported, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, thanks, Justin. I think here's a way to think about the appearances. I love Acts 17. I'm sure Bart loves this chapter, and one of my favorite chapters maybe in the entire New Testament, where Paul goes to Athens and he's preaching on the Areopagus. But before that, it actually says that Paul was interacting daily with those who happened to be there in the marketplace and on the streets. And so here Paul's a street preacher, and I just love the idea of him engaging with pagans. And I like to imagine, how did Paul engage with them? What was the content? We're not told the content of those conversations. And so I like to think, in light of the appearances, I think the appearances probably would have been one of the things that he would have presented to a pagan as evidence for the resurrection of Jesus. He probably would have said something like, hey, Jesus appeared to me and I hated him. I believed he was cursed of God on the cross. I believed that, he needed to be, his movement needed to be wiped out. I was on my way to arrest Christians. And ultimately he appeared to me and he loved me and he forgave me and he can forgive you. And then maybe the pagan was kind of like a Bart Ehrman skeptic and said something like, oh, well, why should I believe you, Paul? And Paul said, well, what about Peter? Peter was his chief disciple and Jesus appeared to him. I can introduce you to him. And what about James, his brother? And what about a group of disciples that ultimately were with Jesus for 3 years? That he appeared to them multiple times. And also 500 people even.
Let's see if I could do this. But yeah, that is great. 500 people seen Jesus. There's so much evidence for Jesus. Well, this plays. Okay.
Jesus appeared to at one time. And hundreds of them, I've met many of them, hundreds of them are still alive. And you can go and investigate and talk to them about what it was like to see Jesus. I mean, I like to just imagine that it was something like that. But, I find that compelling, and I think that, that kind of layout is what Luke means in the beginning of Acts when he refers to the convincing proofs. He says there were these convincing proofs, tekmerios, this great Greek word that was used for irrefutable statements in rhetorical Greek documents. And these convincing proofs were probably the appearances, and I think that really has been
and to that extent,
that's been what's been convincing to Christians throughout the last 2,000 years.
And your contention is that most New Testament historians, be they Christian or not, agree that these claims happened, that people said that they had seen the risen Jesus or met the risen Jesus.
Well, let me get specific because I get specific in the book. So there's actually, by my count, 13 appearances of Jesus, 4 individual appearances to individuals, and 9 to groups, 9 groups. But 4 of those, the 4 individuals, that's the ones probably we'll discuss here. The 4 individuals are the ones that are pretty much bedrock. Virtually all will accept that Jesus appeared to, or Peter believed Jesus appeared to him. James, the brother of Jesus, believed he appeared to him. Paul obviously believed he appeared to him. And then we can bring in Mary Magdalene because I'm pretty sure Bart, he can correct me if I'm wrong, but believes Mary Magdalene also had that experience. She's accounted for in all 4 Gospels, being the first to actually witness the risen Jesus. So those 4 would be kind of the bedrock eyewitnesses.
Well, why don't we stick with those specific ones and get your take on that? But so to what degree do you agree that at least people claimed to have seen the risen Jesus?
I think it's probably right. I mean, Paul certainly. Paul tells us that he did. The problem with these others, of course, is they don't tell us that. So we don't have, Peter didn't leave us writings where he said, I saw Jesus. James didn't leave us writings. We don't know who the 500 were, none of this. So what historians tend to do, of course, is to examine their sources of information. And the most important thing is to know what the sources are, to determine whether they are reliable or not, and to see what they say. I mean, so we infer that I think that Peter probably did say that he saw Jesus, and I think James probably did. I don't know about the 500. They come out of nowhere in 1 Corinthians 15. There's no
Mary Magdalene?
Check this out. I'm going to show you how I afforded this car. Okay, you ready? All right, 100.
Well, we don't have anything from her either, obviously.
I know, but do you believe that she had an experience?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
And I believe that in a lot of religious traditions, you get reports like that. And so my issue with this kind of bedrock thing is whether it's appropriate to consider these kinds of claims outside of other claims for other religious figures. Do we treat them equally, or do we provide a kind of do we say, well, it's more likely true because it's in the Bible and less likely true if it's in the Mormon tradition, or if it's in the Muslim tradition, or if it's in ancient Greek and Roman mythology, or not just mythology, ancient Greek and Roman history. And so do you give equal weight to everything? And if so, then why is it that you prefer these witnesses to the others?
Yeah,
Justin.
Great question. What is the evidence? So my question would be, what is the evidence? You brought up Islam, you brought up Mormonism. Well, in Islam, this only supernatural really claim is to Muhammad. It's one, one eyewitness. And I agree with Deuteronomy. We shouldn't trust anything unless it's at least 2 or 3 witnesses. So we have 4 that you agree with. In Christianity, when it comes to Mormonism, again, Joseph Smith is the only person to say that Moroni appeared to him, and he says Jesus and God the Father and a lot of other strange things.
I'm not sure, Justin.
But only one person, only one
such a
eyewitness in
great
both those
point.
cases, both those religions you brought up. But I'd like to hear the evidence.
Well,
Like so many religions, how they start off is because they were alone and they had this encounter. But with Jesus, we have over 4 people write about Jesus, and we have over 500 of them claim to see Jesus. That's crazy. That's at least we have more than one that even scholars can agree on. Absolutely amazing. So good. Yeah, I don't know how, Mr. Split, I don't know how I can change the 70 words per minute thing. I kind of looked for a little bit, and I have no idea.
I don't know.
Roman.
I don't know if you've studied Mormonism very much.
Oh, I've studied a lot.
There are 11 eyewitnesses, and they
To,
all
to the golden plates.
Yes.
Yeah. So we're
Yes.
going to compare
And that
golden plates to
4
the resurrection of Jesus?
No, I'm just saying if you're a historian,
Yeah.
and what you're doing is you're saying we're going to trust eyewitnesses.
Okay, I'm fine with them seeing golden plates, but what does that tell
4
us?
of them say they saw Moroni give them to him. 4 saw him.
Wow.
Who actually signed affidavits.
Half of them left the faith.
They left. No, they didn't. They
abandoned
left.
Joseph
They
Smith.
left Joseph
Well,
Smith.
they
but they
abandoned Joseph
continued.
Smith, yeah.
But when they abandoned Joseph Smith, they continued to say that they saw Moroni. So, do you credit those?
Okay, well that would only be 3. But
No,
to
but
abandon Joseph Smith, Joseph Smith
5.
is the foundational prophet.
It's 4 plus Joseph Smith. That's 5. I'm just saying, are you being impartial, or are you saying it's more likely because these are biblical witnesses?
Well, okay.
In those
let me
cases, by
grant-
the way, we actually have their testimony.
Okay.
And it's within 100 years.
Yeah, but it's
so
good enough.
with the New Testament, you don't have Peter's testimony
But
or,
it's- but what
or
it-
James's testimony or the 500, or so you don't have 4. You've got Paul.
But what we have is good enough to convince you. For the New Testament eyewitnesses, you've already agreed that
this
Jesus.
is
you
exactly
believe
my point.
Jesus appeared to them.
Exactly my point.
That was a good point, though. I didn't know 4 people apparently have seen the golden plates, apparently. But if someone left Mormonism, that's actually really funny. Apparently, if they saw them and then still left.
I agree they claimed it.
But let's stick with
But that
Moroni.
isn't proof that it happened.
Right. And
Who
that's
else
the
has
difference.
Moroni appeared to other than those people in history?
We're talking about a particular event. Was Jesus raised from the dead and a particular
But other things can support another event, right? So if Jesus is appearing to people, for example, all throughout history, if we have eyewitness,
That's a separate argument.
Okay.
So I think we have to take
But that
one
would
argument at a
contribute-
time, because if you just start piling on arguments, we have to consider each of those arguments in turn.
Okay, but I'm giving.
So
I'm just giving you my reasoning that
I
why
understand.
Moroni's not convincing.
I understand,
All right.
but I don't think you've listened to my case here.
Okay.
You are basing everything you said.
I'm not basing everything.
You said the
We're
bedrock.
starting with appearances. This isn't my only argument.
You said the bedrock is Paul, because Paul gives us the information about Cephas and James. Correct?
I said Paul is the bedrock in the sense that the vast majority of scholars agree when it comes to Paul. That's what I mean by
How
bedrock.
many ancient Christian writings do we have by somebody who says in those writings that he saw Jesus?
Directly, Paul.
Thank you.
But
How
we
many
have,
do we have?
we have
for-
Peter. I would say Peter wrote first and second Peter. And second Peter, Peter says that he saw
saw the transfiguration.
the transfiguration. Exactly.
That's not the resurrection.
Okay.
So you've
but
got
John
Paul.
saw the risen Jesus, at least in heaven, in Revelation.
Are you're counting that as a historical source?
What has lasted 5,000 years was
Of seeing something, of seeing Jesus again. That's
In
enough.
heaven.
That would contribute to the argument. Again, that's the point. That these things go back
Okay.
to
Let me try again.
support
because
the
I think
original
I want us to be clear what we're
miraculous
talking
claim.
about.
You have nothing beyond
be
those
clear.
3 witnesses with Moroni.
Okay,
Nothing.
Let me finish.
Okay.
you're saying that Paul gives us the evidence for himself. He saw Jesus, but none of the others. You think Peter wrote 1st and 2nd Peter, and okay, but that would be 2.
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying that in the case of Moroni giving Joseph Smith the plates, we have 4. So if the idea is that you trust eyewitnesses who swear to what they saw, and that we're doing this impartially,
Okay.
we're doing this impartially as historians. In other words, we're not trying to back up our faith. We're not trying to prove that we're right about something. Historians don't do that. Historians try to figure out what happened in the past, and they evaluate their sources. So what I'm saying is, if you're going to take the sources that agree with you and you say that they're probably right, not because they agree with you, but because they're reliable sources, because you've got Paul and you've got Peter say, okay, well, I've got 4 people from Moroni giving the plates. And these people are highly religious people. The religiosity was never questioned. I am not saying that I think that it happened. I don't think it happened.
Yeah, for good reason.
But on the way you're mounting an argument for Paul and Peter, I don't see how you can exclude the argument for.
That's true. I think that Bart Ehrman has a good point for this Justin guy. But if you believe Paul, what he says about the 500 people walking with Jesus, and he appeared to over 40, or he ate with people for 40 days. That's also something to take into consideration. And also, we know that Joseph Smith was a con artist. He did things for his own gain. Jesus literally got killed. Joseph Smith jumped out of a window.
Well, let's hear from Justin. So essentially, Justin, is the question here, is there better evidence that the resurrection claims of these first followers of Jesus are better evidence than other claims from other religious traditions like Mormonism and so on, where they also claim to have been eyewitnesses to something miraculous?
Exactly. And what I was saying with the when it comes to the 4 eyewitnesses, one of them is Joseph Smith.
No. There's 4 in addition to Joseph Smith who claim they saw him. So there's 5.
Okay.
Well, regardless, but I guess I want to hear why you.
Dang, this guy must. I didn't know this either, but I'm not obviously debating. So this guy's getting kind of cooked here, sadly.
If you
It's
do
multiple-
regard them as different in some way to the
because
Mormons,
they're claiming a supernatural being named Moroni appeared to them. Okay. And so who else then has this Moroni figure appeared to? Because there's been other people that have claimed supernatural things have happened. But see, one of the things that I would say, well, who else has they appeared to, right?
Okay.
And who else has Moroni appeared to?
Well,
Other than those 4.
Okay, but the one thing I would say, though, we can look at Paul's life. These people probably were already following Joseph Smith. Probably. Let's just say. I'm guessing. I have no idea. But Paul, we know for sure, was completely against Christianity, was completely against Jesus until he saw Jesus. Then he completely flipped and changed his mindset. So that's something. Yeah. Coda James says, so making that kind of claim has much more weight than it does coming from a book written by Joseph Smith, who has no skin in the game and no life threat. The reasons why it's not the same when Paul says that he saw Jesus when Moroni says he saw Jesus, it's because we know historically that Paul was within the time frame of Jesus. True.
I just want you to agree that's a separate argument now.
Yeah, but
You
it
want supporting
contributes.
So let me.
I build a case with
Yeah,
multiple
exactly, I
arguments.
get it.
It's not just one.
So when it comes to corroborative evidence of later witnesses, what about the angel? What about the Mother Mary?
Mm-hmm.
Now, Mary appears regularly to people. It's completely well documented. Thousands of people claim this happens. And I'm going to assume that since you're not Catholic, you don't think these appearances happened.
I'm open to the evidence, and I do think some of the stories
Okay, so what
of
do you think
Mary
of
is
the evidence?
compelling. I think some of the stories is compelling.
You think she does appear to people?
But I think what the issue
No,
with
no. Do you think she appears to people?
no, I don't. I don't know.
You just said the evidence was compelling.
Well, I said it's it's something to look into. I'm saying it's enough to look into.
Why don't you look into it? This would be
Well,
very important.
I have looked into it.
Okay, so
But let me answer. I think it lacks the unexpectedness. So it makes and it normally happens in Catholic contexts.
no, this is completely wrong. It does not.
Well,
Does not.
let me finish.
let's let Justin finish his point.
It
and I'll
normally
let you
happens
come
in
back.
Catholic contexts. Okay.
Okay.
And
always,
so
but-
people who are already Catholic,
Yes.
who expect, they pray to Mary regularly. They expect saints they pray to saints. They expect this kind of thing, and it's happened in only a handful of type of situations that have actually been confirmed by the church. But I ask you, if Mary is actually appearing to people, would that support the resurrection or not support the resurrection?
No, I'm saying that you have better.
No, answer that question.
I will answer it by telling you that we have better evidence for Mary appearing to people, many groups of people in the modern period, than we have for Jesus appearing to people in the modern period.
Okay.
By your criteria, that would mean that it's more likely that Mary is showing up. By your criteria. By
And-
my criteria, neither one happens.
Okay, but
Oh man, I'm sorry, but this guy, Justin, does not seem to be doing a good job right now for an argument for Jesus compared to Bart. But I would see though which one is completely right. I agree with you, Mr. Split. Which one is completely changing someone's life though? Is your life changed for the better? Like as in he's given you purpose and meaning and you have a reason to live for? Or is it so that you have skin in the game to gain pleasure and wealth? That's also something to think about. But yeah, that's crazy. All right, guys, it is getting late here. I need to get going. I need to still edit a video. I'm trying to edit a really in-depth video of Cliff and crazy things that people said to Cliff. And I'm excited for it, but I still need to get a lot done for it to be ready to be posted by Saturday. So pray for me that God gives me strength and that it does well. It reaches a lot of people. Yes, I agree. Oh, man. All right. Any new YouTube content would come or you stick with discussions and debates videos for now? Well, I am making a new style of content. It's not just like it's reaction, but it's not really. I don't know. It's more like better commentary. Be looking out for it. Alex, it's often the argument. Oh, but you also ask your family and friends for prayer. True. Good point, Alex. All right. I'm going to let you guys go. Love and appreciate you all. Man, I'm yawning here. Okay, let me pray for y'all. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for everyone watching this video and on the live. Thank you for all the love and support that they've shown to me. And God, I pray that you will just bless them and keep them safe, whatever's going on in their life. You know what's going on. You know the difficulties. You know the hardships that are going on. I pray that you'll be with them, keep them safe, and help them to know that they're loved by you, God. And thank you for all that you're doing. Bless us all and help us have an amazing night. Rest. I pray that we will draw closer to you in everything that we do. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, guys. Thank you so much. Love and appreciate you. Have an amazing